Hello everyone and welcome for another video of Love and War Games. In this video we are going to open the Crown Faction Battle Group starter set, so the big box for those of you who want to defend the British Empire in Armoured Clash. And in the second longer half of the video we are going to take a look at each and every unit, how to play them, how to build your list, everything you need to know as a Crown player on how to play this faction. So as you can see, it's an absolutely massive box, much larger actually, much taller than even the largest box that we used to have for Dystopian Wars. It's 150 euros-ish, and you can get minus 10% on MyOB Place, and then you can choose Love and War Games. We get a few percentage, thank you if you do that. Now that everything has been said, before we even start to open this and do the unboxing, I also want to do what we did for the Empire battle fleet, like a battle group opening and faction starter that we did, which is to weight the box. Yeah, if you really want to see the size comparison with the maximum size box of Dystopian Wars, have a look at the Empire starter video, like how to start. And here, it's a little bit lighter. Let's have a look. It is 100 grams lighter. It's still about 2 kilo and 250 grams of plastic and goodies and tokens and everything, but it's a little bit lighter. Interesting. But it's still an absolutely massive box. And now that we made this little test, because yeah, damn, this thing is heavy, let's have a look at what it is inside. As always, for you guys that only want the Tactica, remember that you have the timestamps at the bottom if you want to see exactly the list building, how to expand, the different little parts that we can get, so you can skip directly to the good part for you. We once again have this absolutely massive and quite premium quality looking box for Armoured Clash. I love what War Cradle has been doing with their unboxing. Okay, we still have this little set, this little paper to remember like what is Armoured Clash. You have the orbats and the rules for free there, okay? Remember that, yeah, there is also Dystopian Wars. If you just discovered the channel, we have a lot of battle reports and guides and everything for Dystopian Wars, which is one of the two main games of the channel. And both games are very linked. Like Armoured Clash is the ground 10mm war game, and this is the naval, like I think it's 1.5 or 3mm war game, where you have the same factions, and there is actually a campaign system where you can play first naval and then the ground, or vice versa. It's really quite cool. You get, of course, the full heavy set of the rules. This is a very beautiful book. We already took a look at it in the video where we unboxed the 2-player starter set, and I explained a little bit the rules. We are going to make didactic battle report as soon as we have enough miniatures painted. Yeah, we have already teasers for new factions like the Imperium, the Germans, that are gonna look absolutely brilliant. I know that one of the players said dibs on this, but I might keep it for myself. Who knows? So very high quality books with different scenarios, a lot of fluff, like the map of the world that we will see in a second. And if you want to have a deeper look at what is inside this book, like the fluff and everything, take a look at our 2-player starter set unboxing, the Battle for Singapore. Of course, you're gonna get all the tokens that you need, and we have the same tokens that were popped as for the Empire. Interesting. And yeah, as we said for the Empire video, high quality tokens, much higher than those you have, for example, in Legion, the Imperialists, and even higher quality than those for Dystopian Wars, which were already good quality. Sorry, Zongo, who is going to get the box later. I'm just gonna pop. Okay, this one flew away a bit too far, but let me just take a look at this. Yeah, you see it's really good quality. You can use it to count wounds as well, and it's like double-sided. Quite smart to do it like this, and this is to count the damage, or either the points of life that you have left, which is what I recommend to do because it's clear for your opponent who doesn't know your stat line, or you can put the number of damage you have, which is easier to count, but then your opponent is like, okay, you took 5 damage, but do you have like 6 health, 8 health, etc. So I always recommend to put the number of health you have left. As we've said, we have a map of the world. We've seen it quite a few times already. Let's take a look. Let me take a wide angle. Yeah, that's gonna be better. So map of the world, here we're gonna talk about the crown. So of course the British Islands in the center, Canada, South Africa, India, and Australia. Right now we have, for Dystopian War, the naval game, we have the British, of course, the Irish fortifications, the Canadian fleets with the incredible submarine carrier. We have the Indians as well, which are OP as hell, and the Australians, which have been teased but are not coming this year, and we'll see for the rest. And if you want to have a deeper explanation of each faction, again, I point you out to the 2-player starter set Battle for Singapore unboxing that we did. And you are going to be as the crown because you're the little favorites of War Cradle. No, just kidding. But you're going to get the poster of your faction, while the other factions apparently are going to have this as well. For you, it's quite lucky because it's exactly your faction that you have in B. You have also the cards to play the game, the Command and Conquest, not Command and Conquer. The Command and Conquest sets, very important part of the game. It's the same as the cards of Dystopian Wars. You get some cards that you can regen, and then you can use them either to gain a big bonus, either to gain some victory points. So it's always good, and it's even more important than in Dystopian Wars. So very good that it's there. It was not in the 2-player starter set, at my big upsetting, and I'm very happy that we have them there. You have 2 sets of dices, very well. If you want to understand a bit more how they play, again, 2-player starter set, we talk about the rules a bit more. The Landship, which looks absolutely massive when I see it like this, we'll unbox it at the end because the sprues, I've seen them already in the previous boxes, but this, oh my god, look at the size of this. Okay, we'll keep it for the end. You have, of course, some terrain, so this is some objective sets, so very cool with this little cog symbol, I like it. Your massive ship, when it turns, it's quite lumbering, so it cannot just teleport around like in miniatures. You have to make it turn like this quite slowly, and it doesn't stop right away. This to measure distance, very well. This I think is to count the number of the turn or the victory points. I think it's the turn, You have a lot of bases. We had 11 sets of infantry bases for the Empire, but they had more infantry. We'll count how many they are. Few things to note, you have some flags for your officers. Some of them are full terrain, very cool if you want to put artillery or make a little scenic scene, etc. Or you can just put your infantry in these little bases there. And yeah, that's quite good. If you want, you can even just put the ground here and put only 3 infantry there. For example, this is an option. And then you have some extra infantry that are not been spent on making your infantry stands. And you can use them as a garrison, for example, for your massive landships. Or if you put some bases under your tanks. I know you're not supposed to, but if you want to make it more beautiful, you can absolutely put a base under your tanks and get some infantry units walking around alongside your tanks, and this looks just brilliant. From experience from other 10 or 8 millimeters war games I've been doing. Indeed, you have a bit less than for the Empire. You have 9 packs of bases for the crown, but it's okay. They are a bit more elite, like their mainline infantry goes 6x6 instead of 8x8 for the Empire, and they do have a little bit less infantry, so it's absolutely normal. You still have a lot of things, but what they miss on the infantry, they for sure make up in terms of artillery, tanks, heavy tanks, and everything. We're going to take a look at this in a second. Then the same as for the Empire and for the starter set, you have 4 sprues of terrain. 2 are exactly the same like this, and 2 are exactly the same like that. Very happy that they include terrain, because it's a huge part of the game, and if you didn't play 8mm or 10mm war games before, you might not have any terrain yourself, and it's such a huge part of the game to put your infantry into garrison. Like, it's huge in every single game. Like, it's going to be the same in Flames of War, in Epic Warpath. All of them are going to be important. Full Spectrum Dominance, of course, and you need terrain, and having those very modular terrains that you can build and make different sizes, different floors, you can make little archways and stuff. It's great that you have this in 1-player starter set, because it means even if you're both new players, you will not play on a blank table with just a few trees and stuff. You will have terrain to fight over, and that's very important. If you want to have a deeper look at this, you can take a look at our video, which is called Dystopian Industrial Set, and I also point you out to Speed Demon Painting, which is another channel that does mostly Dystopian Wars and Armoured Clash. He has a great tutorial on how to build those guys. Finally, half the box is of course all the different plastic miniature sprues that you're gonna get. You will have 4 sprues of armored units. This is the core of the crown, but also the heart of the crown, 4 sprues of the infantry regiments. So each box that you would buy of infantry and stuff would be 2 sprues. So it's like buying 2 boxes of infantry and 2 boxes of tanks. And in total, you get all of it. So it's quite good what you get. Let's take a look at a single sprue, because it's going to be easier to understand what is inside. And as you can see, you have a lot of stuff. Let me zoom because it's quite small. I would like you to understand even the scale of this. As you can see, I put my finger against it and I don't have huge hands, believe me. You can see the scale of it and the level of details. Like, you really need to be a little sniper to be able to paint this at the highest level of detail, because damn, this thing is absolutely minuscule. But the level of detail is there if you want. I think you really will want to have some contrast to paint this. And yeah, they look brilliant. You have even the little smoke there for the flying guys, the Spitfire Rocketeers. We'll take a look a little bit deeper in the Tactica, how to play each and every single one of those guys. But you're gonna have your rifle line infantry, you're gonna have your snipers, like the Australian snipers, I forgot the name. You're gonna have the Scottish engineers, the Spitfire Rocketeers, and yeah, those guys are the Rocketeers. You need to give them the little backpack to fly. Those are the snipers, the Australians. And you're supposed to have also, yeah, here for example, you have the Scottish engineer there that have an extremely cool rule with crashed giant landships. I will not spoil, okay, I can spoil you. They can garrison destroyed landships that stay on the terrain, and they can garrison it as if it was a building. It's incredibly cool and thematic rule, and I really hope that the factions I'm going to play later on, so Union, maybe Imperium, Alliance, etc., I really hope they have a similar rule to this, because I absolutely want to do this. You also get a little cannon, which is the Drake field cannon. You have actually, I think, 3 of those. That's a lot. Okay, you only have 2 of the field Drake cannons that you can build per sprue, so 4 per box. Okay, that's quite good. And this is if you want to put it inside your little rhino. Sorry, I think it's called a Stirling. And you can use this transport as a transport, indeed, or you can put a little cannon on it and it becomes a mobile artillery, which is extremely cool concept. As you can see, like, great plastic quality. Again, I will point you out to Speed Demon Painting about how to paint those guys. I already made a guide on how to paint 10mm infantry. I will also point you to one of our painter, which is a Top Secret Painting. You have the links in the description. And he's right now busy making tutorials for Dystopian Wars, but he's gonna soon switch to Armoured Clash, and he will make tutorials on how to paint those guys. Switching now to the Armored Sprue, and this is where you're gonna have the big, massive Galahad tank, which the British call a medium tank. So I'm really excited to see if we're gonna have heavy tanks for those guys. It's basically a Mark 1 or Mark 5 of the British Empire of the First World War. You can also call it a Land Raider if you want, or yeah, you can call it however you want. There is a version where it's like has a heavy pro ram with a huge cannon, but it also can be the Tristan heavy transport with the assault ramp in the front, which does what assault ramp does, which allows you to charge easily after being transported. You have per box 5 stands of cavalry, and those are mechanical horses. I love the concept, they look amazing. You are also going to get some heavy artillery, and I'm not sure we can see them well. This is part of the artillery. Is basically a huge landing platform, and I mean it when I say it's huge. It's basically a little diorama with like 3 or 4 guys loading a massive platform of artillery. It looks brilliant. You can make the Mordred or the Gores, heavy artillery, heavy bombard. And this is what you are going to get in this sprue, which is already quite a lot. You can see the little artillery guys. If I put the other side, you will see that some of them have little binoculars. Some of them are like giving orders to fire. And this is typically the kind of guys, like if you want to miss one on one of your artillery and put some of those guys on your landship as a garrison, having this little guy just looking forward from the very top of your landship can look brilliant. You can also put some flags around your landship to customize if you don't think you need it on your horses and stuff. I really think you should customize your landship, because they are going to be your main centerpiece, even more than your flagships were in Dystopian Wars. Just to give you an example, in Dystopian Wars, most flagships are around 250, 300 points maybe, and in Armoured Clash, while the scale is the same, you can play up to 2,000 points. The default landship that we see, which are not even super massive, like we suppose that's going to be even higher later on in the game, those landships are already close to 500 points. So really do take a few miniatures left and right, snipers, guys with binoculars and stuff, to put them in garrison with your landship, because when you're gonna get your landship, you're gonna get a lot less troops around. Talking about landship, let's open this massive box of resin, shall we? It is such an absolutely massive block of resin. Okay, I will try to put it down calmly. Oh my god, it's so wow. Unlike the landship of the Empire, this one is one massive block, and that's what I was afraid. Now that I have it in my hand, I want to play the crown, of course. Look how gorgeous it is. My god, it's massive. Like, if you compare it with any Dystopian Wars things, this thing is as large. Okay, it's not an Ice Maiden either, but damn. And yeah, as you can see, even without the main artillery or control platform, you see you have some space here or there. You can have some infantry going around. Love the level of details with the little doors. You can really paint this beautifully. I love the little lines head here. And you even have like an assault ramp here, I guess, if you want to go out and make some sortie. Oh my god, you have little ladders on the side. Like, this is so straight out of Mortal Engine. My god. Okay, there is... I keep hearing this. Ah, okay, there is a little bit of flash. Whoa. Well, when I say a little bit, yeah, no damage. You just need to clean it like this. I thought I heard something. All right, with the beautiful cannon there. Let's have a look at the other bits. Like, I was just, sorry, staring at this. Of course, you're gonna have all the beautiful exhaust pipe that are going to be mostly in the back, probably. Some little parapet to protect your troops. So the parapets are going to go somewhere there probably, and this means you can really make some beautiful shooting galleries for your guys, and maybe in the front as well. Depends where you want to put them. Okay, it can really make this beautiful. Again, you do you guys, but I really think you should have some infantry just standing around to really give a sense of scale. Do note that some of the cannons that you can put around are part of the tanks, the Galahad tanks. So before you build your Galahads, at the very least, have a look at the bits you will need, so you don't make a mistake and build all the wrong versions of the Galahad. For example, anti-tank, and then you don't have anti-tank guns for this guy, even though you want it. So be very careful. And I would even recommend to glue or magnetize, or do your landship first and do the Galahad second. Okay, the command version, which is quite small, because when you consider, like, it looks huge, but this window that you see in the command stand is basically barely one man can go through it. So weird sense of scale, but the front is quite beautiful with those two command things. Oh my god. Okay, quite cool. And then you're gonna get the artillery version, of course, here. And some of the things that I've been calling exhaust pipe are actually not exhaust pipes, they are artillery guns to go there. And well, you will see when we go to the Tactica very soon, but you will see what the artillery version is supposed to be. I think both are quite cool. Do you need to magnetize them? Like, let's see, like, I am moving the thing. Yeah, well, if I shake like this, of course it's gonna move. But if I just use my little goodie to maneuver and I just move it like this, yeah, if you move it slowly, it's not supposed to move. You don't even need to glue it or anything. It's gonna be fine. And then you can just switch from one model to the other. Yeah, it almost clips, to be fair. Like, there's a little place here, you really don't need to glue or magnetize. Just put it like this, and then it doesn't move, like, at all. I don't know if you can see, but it doesn't move. Of course, if you start to shake like that, it's gonna move. Usually you don't play like this. Okay, that's a lot. I mean, a lot of plastic, a lot of everything. There is, like, the maps, the tons of plastic, like the resin, again, it's 150 euros. So 135 if you go through my place, and then you can credit us. Thank you if you do that. As always, you may keep the channel alive. But yeah, you do have so many things. I just zoomed out. You have so many sprues of terrain, of, like, basically everything. And yeah, that looks brilliant. We're gonna try to gather the terrain, everything in one place, get it painted, and have a full-size table with so many terrain. And I think, yeah, we can already make a quite nice city fight. We also bought some terrain from another very famous manufacturer. We'll see to try to mix and match, but there are some mechanical manufacturer that I think will go good with the industrial sets of Dystopian Wars. So do expect a beautiful Armoured Clash terrain table for the how to start to play Didactic Battle Report, and for, of course, upboard our narrative campaign. But you think it's over? Not at all. Look at the time in the video. We are just getting started, because now we are going to take a deep dive at each and every unit that you can have in the crown, having a look at how to build your list, how to play those guys. So it's gonna be a long video, as you know already, because you already clicked on the miniature. But without further ado, let's go for the Tactica. And all right, we arrive at the Tactica part of the video. So this is the main part. You have the crown force. How do you play it? How do you build your list? What do you do with it? Well, that's what we're going to have a look at. As always, timestamps if you want to skip at the unit that interests you. So we're gonna first see how to build the list, like what are the construction restrictions that you can have. Then each unit, I'm gonna give you some tips about how to play them, what is their strength, how not to play them sometimes. And at the end, how to expand. Like there are a few boxes that you might want to buy that are available for the crown players. So we'll talk about how to expand beyond this starter. First thing that I want to give some ideas is like the general crown playstyle on the table. So as you might know of the crown, they are one of the classical factions in the sense they don't have crazy insane technology even in dystopian wars, but also in Armoured Clash, and they're really well organized. They have been the dominant superpower for a while now in the universe, and they are going down a little bit. However, they still have one of the largest army in the world. Like they have so many ships and aircrafts, like all the rotorcrafts, and so many soldiers everywhere. They are well disciplined, they know how to fight, and they fight well in a straight-on fight. And the other superpowers that are rising now have adapted to how to fight because of the crown playstyle. So for example, the Alliance having these drop pods to go behind enemy lines, the Commonwealth having these units that can dig below the ground, of course the Union jumping around, Sultanate teleporters. All of this have been kind of like purpose made to defeat the crown, because if you face the crown head on, you will lose. So you need to make sure you don't face to face the crown on an open field, because that's where they are the strongest and that's where you will lose. Overall, they are quite defensive, again, as in dystopian wars, so they don't have insane firepower, insane range or anything, but they are tough, like they are resilient, and they are good for beginners actually, because you have good defense, good morale, like good discipline, leadership I think it's called, and you have easy to understand units. You will see that each of them they really look like normal units of the real world, so it's very easy to understand how to play them, and thus I think they are going to be one of the best army for beginners. It was the case already in dystopian wars. Crown is very good for beginners, and it might be even more the case in Armoured Clash, because really they're very, very easy to play. And it's the enemy that needs to have solution on how to handle you, because you just need to hold the center, project your army, use your unit as they're supposed to be used, and just hold the center, and the enemy has to have solutions on how to go on your flanks, how to go behind you, how to deal with your artillery, because you put problems to the enemy that he has to answer, and you're more like this traditional, very slow, very straightforward army to play, which is great for beginners. So okay, as we said, you have a lot of things in the box. You've seen this already, but when you see it built, like it looks massive. I will see all of those one by one. I will not make the list of all the units, but remember that you have some terrain right there. You also have the rulebook, the command cards, very important, all the dices, measuring tools, the objectives, the tokens. All of this, we are not going to talk about it again in the video, but remember that it's quite important. You do have a lot, especially the terrain is quite expensive, because you see it's a lot of plastic. And yeah, absolutely, it's massive, but what we're going to focus on is all the different units, and we're going to take a look at them pretty much in this order, I think. So let's get going, and we start with how to build your lists. Because you have units, but you need to make a list, and there are some restrictions. It's not like 40k right now, where it's extremely free. You have some restrictions, which is good. Basically, you're going to build, as in dystopian wars, through battle groups, which means you're going to have one commander, obligatorily, and then you have some slots. Depending on the battle groups, as you can see, there are a few different types of battle groups, you will have choices to make. For example, and this is the first thing, this is the basic crown faction battle group. You have to have one commander, that's it, not more, not less, and you have to have a minimum of one infantry, you see, 1 to 4. So minimum one infantry unit, regardless of the size of the infantry unit, and maximum of 4. And if you want more than 4 infantry units, you will need another battle group to have the slots to put your units. You can have between 0 and 3 crown cavalry units, and okay, that's actually good. Cavalry, maybe you want to have a MSU, that could be interesting actually. Only one field gun, that is quite big one, because field guns, you have very good Drake field guns, we'll talk about it. So only one slot, it can be problematic. This is one slot where you can have trouble making your list. Up to 4 units of Crown armored unit, like tanks. That's a lot, and the Crown likes their tanks, and we will see more. Like, they have really good options, and even battle group focused on that. And then artillery, also you have a focused battle group on the Crown artillery. But even if you just take one basic faction battle group, you can have 2 different units of Crown artillery. You can have one of each type. You will see there are 2 different variants, so that's quite good. There are 2 important things that I need to tell you. The first is that no unit can be put twice in the same battle group. So let's say you have Crown tanks, for example, the Crown armor. You cannot put twice the same regiment of armored, for example, the breacher tank. You cannot have it twice. You can have one unit, whatever the size, small unit, big unit of a big pack, etc. But you cannot have 2 activations of the same unit in the same battle group, except when they are mainstay. For example, the rifle platoons here and the Galahad main battle tank, which are the basic infantry and basic tank units. Those, they are mainstay, so you can have them twice per battle group. It doesn't mean you can spam them as much as you want, unlike in Dystopian Wars, you can only have it twice. Still quite good, but it does mean, for example, for the Crown, that there might be a time where you don't have enough places. Like, you might have too many slots and you will not know how to fill them up if you build your list a little bit freely, if you build your miniatures before you have a look at the battle groups. The other thing I want to say about this is that, don't worry, it's very easy to build a battle group. You can have one little infantry platoon that can be a commander, and it's not as much as a problem as it can sound. You can very easily build new battle groups. There is no limit at how many battle groups you can have in a list, so don't worry too much about it. Second big thing I want to tell you about how to build your list is that some units can be bolstered. You can see here your commander can be bolstered and your infantry can be bolstered, and none of the others. What does it mean to have a unit that can be bolstered? Well, depending on the scale of point scale of the game that you play, your units can be built either at the minimum size. For example, the infantry, you're going to have 6 rifle stands at the minimum size. If you play a middle-sized game, you can have reinforced unit of, for example, 12 infantry, okay? And if you play maximum, like 2,000 plus points games, you can have full strength regiment, and then you have twice the size, so it's going to be 18 stands of infantry. So okay, we were going to see that, for example, in the data sheets, but most of the time you can see what is your firepower depending on your size, and minimum size, middle size, full strength size. And remember that it's very difficult to reach tier 3 of the size of the units, except if you play at higher point scale. So it's quite interesting, and it is linked to how you buy your miniatures, because every box that you're going to buy is going to have, for example, 2 sprues of infantry or 2 sprues of tanks, etc. And every 2 sprues that you buy, so every box that you buy, is one size of unit. So you buy one infantry box, you're going to have 6 rifles. You buy another box, you're going to have 12 rifles, so you can either make 2 activations of different units or one big activation of 12 rifles. Quite smart how the list is, like how the army building is made, and I quite like it. Now that we have said this, being bolstered, here you can see the commander and the crown infantry, it means that you have a kind of like a cheat code on a single unit, a single infantry unit and a single commander unit, where you can make them a little bit higher than the tier they are. So you play at a small point size game, you can have one infantry that you can put at the middle size, even if you play at the small size. So you can have one big unit of infantry, like middle size unit of infantry, even if you play small points game. And vice versa, you play at middle size points game, you can have one infantry unit at the maximum full strength size. That is especially important because the landships that are commanders are only full strength. So it means, of course, you can play them easily at full strength, but you can also play them at the middle-sized games, because you can have your one commander being bolstered. So from middle it goes to high, and then you can have your landship. So that's always good. It also means if you play at a small point size game, you can have your commander infantry unit, which is what you're going to have being a little bit larger, and we will see that he wants to spread his command bubble. All right, we finished talking about all the little tricks of how to read actually what I'm going to present to you as battle groups. Now that we've said that, what battle groups do you have access to as the crown? As we've seen, like this is like the most
default one, so you have a little list of everything, some mainstay as rifle and Galahad, but what bonus do you get on this one that we used as a test? You have Lion-Hearted, and this is quite strong, because when you need to make a discipline test, like a suppression test, instead of just picking up a random card and you need to have a little bit of luck, like, okay, is it going to be enough or not, you can use a card that is in your hand. And thus you really know, like, you don't waste a card for nothing or whatever. You know if your card is going to be enough, and you can choose the card that you're going to spend. That is huge, because it almost guarantees you to succeed if you have a card that is strong enough. You don't have any +1 or +2 like some of the Empire battle groups could get, but the Empire still relies on luck. Here it really shows how disciplined you are. If you want your unit to succeed the test, you will get it, and you don't have this randomness of picking a card and just crossing your fingers that it's going to be good enough. So huge advantage. It's really big, and it again gives really this vibe of the crown being very tough, and when they are in the trench on the front line, they need to hold the line, they will hold the line. Then you have two specific battle group. They are both auxiliary battle groups, so it means that you need to have one faction battle group, the one that we've seen, for every auxiliary battle group that you will have. So little list construction tricks here. You cannot just play the small scale pawn games and come, okay, I will have one line breaker auxiliary battle group and that's it. No. For each auxiliary battle group, one main faction battle group. Okay. Now that we've said that, what do we get? I absolutely love both of them. They are very thematic. For the Empire, we saw it was basically the same as the default battle group. They had just a little, very small difference and a little different commander bonus. Okay, but those are very thematic, and I love it. The line breaker battle group is one commander, so it can be infantry, but probably you're gonna play this at larger point game. So you're gonna have a massive landship. That's what you're gonna get for sure. And then you can have between 1 and 5 either cavalry, either armor, so you just have this very fast, very powerful unit that are just going to charge down the center, and then you can have between 0 and 2 infantry units. And here it's your cavalry or your armor that can be bolstered. So you can have really one big pack of cavalry or one big pack of tanks, one scale higher than the current point scale of the game, and that is lovely. You have still the rifle platoons and the Galahad that are your mainstay, but you also gain the Glamis Mobile Gun. We'll see what they are in a little bit. They're basically the small transport, like the Rhino transport with a gun on it. So you can have them charging along. It's just glorious. It's like a cavalry/tank charge regiment, and we love it. And what do they get? They have the specific line breakers special command bonus, and this is very thematic. What does it say? It says that you can give this special command to a crown tank, and again, remember that your enemy can counter it with its own cards, etc. So be careful, don't automatically count on it, except if you have a very strong card that you're pretty sure the enemy will not be able to beat. And if you do that, your crown tanks, which usually cannot control strategic objectives, this is what you need infantry for. Well, now just for this end phase, it counts as if it were infantry and cavalry. So your tanks that are damage dealer, very tough, but their big downside is that they cannot take objectives for you. Well, those guys now can, and it can be absolutely game changer. It means that you can have your flamethrower, big breacher tanks right down in the middle, and you don't even need to be followed by infantry. You can have just this huge wall of steel. We'll see the crown tanks, but they're very tough. You can have this huge wall of steel, very hard to deal with. Everything is heavy, everything is tough, and they go in the center. And the enemy can think like, okay, I'm gonna just take care of the infantry so it doesn't take control of the objectives. Well, no, you just put this card. Be careful that it's a powerful card so the enemy has difficulties to counter it. And then you take the objectives anyway. Brilliant, and it opens up the tank-oriented, like tank-focused playstyle for the crown. Beautiful, very thematic battle group, and I kind of wish the Empire had as thematic battle groups as this. The other thematic battle group is the support auxiliary battle group, is the artillery focused one. And again, we see very much what the crown likes. Like they have infantry, they have good infantry even, but not as good as the Empire. The crown has infantry to hold the center, be a little like skirmisher units, or they have good infantry, but their main thing is they have lots of tanks, very great tanks, and also absolutely brilliant artillery. And that's, they just win on the center of the battlefield with tanks that cannot be killed and artillery shooting extremely powerful shells from super far away in the back. Very traditional army, but damn, it's efficient. So their support auxiliary battle group, you have one commander, again, can be whatever you want, can be this huge giant artillery landship that we're gonna see, the Sovereign, or it can be some little infantry, doesn't matter that much. You can have between 1 and 3 artillery units, or field guns, so again, like there's Drake or the artillery. So you can actually, if you want, just with this starter box, fill the 3 slots with 3 different units, 2 different variants of the heavy artillery and 1 of the Drake small guns. You can absolutely do that if you want. And then you can have between 0 and 2 infantry and 0 and 4 armor. So you can have a lot of armor actually if you really want to, but mostly what you want is artillery, because the commander bonus is gun loggers. And this is, again, a special command. You choose either your Drake field guns, either your heavy artillery, they're either of the 2 variants, during your movement step. And if it's successful, you remove the cumbersome effect during this step. And cumbersome basically means that you cannot move. Like, you can move, but then you have reload and you have to spend some actions. It makes it so that the crown artillery cannot move and shoot concretely, like, except in very special exceptions with some special command cards, etc. You cannot remove the reload status that you will have acquired from moving and then shoot. It's impossible to do this. This just removes the fact that you get a reload, so you can move and shoot. No reloading, just, it's really efficient. I actually really like this. The crown artillery does shoot quite far already, but it can really give even further pause to your opponent, because he calculates your threat range from your artillery. Okay, you shoot at this much, but then he has to think like, okay, if he passes the command, maybe when he activates those guys, they're gonna move forward and even increase further this range. So brilliant command again, and it's especially efficient on the Drake field guns, which have less range obviously, and the fact that they can move as well and shoot without any problem makes them quite good. Okay, we are starting to take a look at all the units, because now we've seen like how to build the list, what are the different battle groups, and I think it was important to take this time, especially for the newer players out there who are not familiar with the Dystopian Wars way of building lists. And now that we've said this, let's take a look at the units, and we'll start with the Sovereign Landship, which means I was mistaken. The artillery landship is called the Monarch, actually. And it's gonna take a little bit, because damn, the landships are the coolest models, of course, but there is a lot of things to say about them. They have a lot of rules, as you can see, and it's gonna take a little bit of time. But the Sovereign, first thing to say, it's extremely expensive, 470 points. Even at a 2000 points games, that's almost 1/4 of your list, so wow. But it is tough, it is tough. It is speed 6, and it is ponderous, so it moves like ships in Dystopian Wars. You have to have this little movement tool to make it turn, okay. It has defense 5, which is quite huge, but only 12 damage limit, so it's quite different to the Empire one, but you need a lot of firepower to start to make just 1 point of damage. However, it doesn't have such a huge damage limit, so something to take into consideration. Fair discipline. Let's start with the weapons, because the weapons, surprisingly, are not insane. They're good, don't get me wrong, but it's not why you buy this ship. If you want pure damage, you will take the other land ship. It has, against light units, it can have up to 10 dices within 20 inches, so not insane. The good thing with it is that you can shoot 360. You do get a little penalty to shoot if you don't shoot in the front arc, but you can shoot a little bit everywhere. That's always nice. And it has some good front faced firepower, in the sense of those 2 huge cannons. You have, when you're still intact, 13 dices, devastating, so +1 damage if you have any residual hits. That is good. That is good anti-tank firepower, nothing to say about it. It also has some impact attack, which are not insane either. Like 12 impact for such a big beast without any special keywords is okay, not insane. It has all-out attack 3, so you can make 3 different attacks if you want in the same turn. Do know that indeed you can only shoot 1 line of weapon per activation, so you cannot shoot 3 times the heavy cannons if you want. Something that I said that was a mistake in the previous video of the Empire. Maybe it probably changed since the beta, but it's better now, because you cannot just spam 1 weapon. It does mean that you want this guy to be quite close to the enemy, because you ideally want a light unit to shoot at within 20 inches and a heavy unit within 20 inches. It might sound like a lot, 20 inches, but to have both types in the good range, might be harder than you think. Now that we've said this, why would you take it if it doesn't have such great firepower? It's tough, yes, but you want something more. It has two things. First thing is going to be inspiring, and that means that when your unit, when your sovereign finishes its movement step, so when it finishes moving, you can choose up to 3 different units, so 3 different activations within 12 inches, quite big, and all of them, they lose their suppressed status. So that is huge. It means usually you will want to activate him quite late in the turn to make the most of it, if you can, if you want. And that is just absolutely huge. And it means that this guy, like inspiring, it's such a bad rule in dystopian wars, like it's sad. While in Armoured Clash, it can save you. Like being suppressed is bad, it's really bad news. And just being able to just put your landship in the middle and saying, okay, you know what, those 3 guys, they're fine, they can activate normally. It's huge, absolutely huge. And I love that it's like at the activation of the landship, that when it finishes moving, that it's this giant cathedral moving around, that everybody like, okay, actually the crown is gonna win this battle for sure, and they get their leadership back in order. So that is great. It also has chain of command within 12 inches, so that's good. It gives also leadership bonus. Amazing. If it explodes, there is a chance it explodes hard. Absolutely. The big thing of the Sovereign is that it's actually a transport. Yes, you heard that right. This giant land tank is also a transport. It can have 12 stands embarking inside, which means like 2 platoons of rifles, for example, but you can also, of course, put some actually tougher units that are going to be there. For example, units that want to be in melee and stuff. This is absolutely what you can do. You can have up to 3 sizes of small infantry unit that go 4x4, or you can have 2x6 units. So that is huge, and it really defines how this sovereign is. It's not meant to be in the back, it's meant to be in the front line with the rest of your tanks and everything, embarking some infantry that are ready to step out as soon as it's needed. Especially good to have some rifles, we'll see them in a second, but they are good to absorb the enemy's charge, so you keep them inside, and then if the enemy starts to get closer, you disembark your 12 stands of infantry in front of you, making a firing line, and then the enemy is going to have a real hard time charging through and getting to you. All the meanwhile, you keep giving your commandment boost, and you, of course, you still have great attacks, and you remove suppress, you give your chain of command. It's amazing. This ship is brilliant. I'm not the hugest fan of the design, especially the command center in this here, where the huge windows barely fits a human in the scale, but still gameplay wise I really like this guy, especially because it's transport and it opens up so many tricks for this. Then you have the Monarch Landship, which is my little favorite because, come on, how can you not look this giant artillery on wheels? This guy is interesting. It's basically the same defensive profile, like actually exactly the same defensive profile, so defense 5, damage 12 hull points, damage limit as it's called. It's 20 points more expensive, okay, and it is neither inspiring and it doesn't have any transport capacity either. So you lose 2 big things and you have a chance to explode even harder. When you do explode, what do you gain out of it? Like, why is it more expensive? Well, it's more expensive because it gains 1 new attack, and it's this giant cannon. It has 1 role. You might think it's giant artillery against tanks, and it's not, so be careful about that. It's the ultimate anti-fortification weapon in the game right now. This giant cannon has all these rules, and as you can see, while you are intact, and since you are artillery, you will be way in the back, and you will be intact for a while, this guy can shoot up to 60 inches, insane, and if you shoot within 30 inches, which is still a huge roll, you're gonna be considered at short range, so you have even more bonus, amazing. You cannot shoot with this giant cannon within 10, but if there there is a problem if it happens. If you want to shoot at entrenched infantry within 10, like, don't charge with this guy, come on. What special rule does it have? The main one is going to be Siege Breaker. As you can see, it's right here. Basically, it means you shoot at infantry in a garrison, in a defensible building. So it can be a trench, it can be a bunker, it can be like a building, anything that is defensible, and thus gives so many bonuses to the infantry. Like, as always in epic scale games, infantry in building, it's a huge yes. You want to get them out. How do you do? Don't put out the flamethrowers or anything. Don't clear the building. Just shoot with a siege breaker. When you finish, you throw dice, a single dice, and you have a 5+, 1 chance out of 3, to just wreck the building outright. So the building, after you shoot at the infantry inside, first of all, you're going to kill a lot of infantry because we're going to have a look at the stats. And second of all, the building might just collapse outright. And then it's wrecked, nobody can go inside, and the infantry inside needs to make an exit maneuver. Like, everybody needs to leave because the building is collapsing. And it's then a blocking terrain. Like, this can just shoot turn after turn on buildings and just make them collapse. Either they're big bunkers where your enemy is hiding, can be an important key building in the center where he has some very good melee infantry. This guy will just clear it all out. However, it has 2 bad rules, like negative rules that he has, reload and slow to fire. Slow to fire is the first one. When you shoot with a big giant gun, you gain a reload status. Isn't that great? Especially because of reload. This unit, this big cannon, cannot, I will call it a siege breaker cannon now, it cannot shoot while you have a reloading status. So you cannot spam it at all, and it will take you, technically, 2 activations, because you're going to shoot with it, you're going to get reloading status, and maybe you're going to do another attack, like heavy attack, for example. It means the next turn, you will want to have this activation of, with a lot attack, first a lot attack, removing reloading status, and then shooting again with the big cannon, and then you will get a reload status again that you can remove right away if you would like to. But yeah, it will consume a lot of your activations to shoot with this siege breaker cannon. However, this is really the reason why you buy the Monarch, so of course you will want to use it, because it's too good. It's indirect as well, so you can absolutely shoot without any problem, even if you don't see the enemy, so they cannot hide anywhere within 60 inches. The only negative of this weapon is that it's anti-light. So you cannot shoot at the enemy heavy artillery, if they have. You cannot shoot at the enemy tanks, but especially the heavy artillery is going to be sad. You can only shoot at infantry. So if your enemy has elite infantry in buildings, saves your life. If not, you just bought yourself a more expensive sovereign with less rules and that you will not make the most of. However, if I can make a bet, we didn't have yet our first game of Armoured Clash because our army is still being painted, but we've seen some demo battle reports by the game developers. Probably infantry in garrisons are going to be a huge problem for everyone, so it is going to be extremely rare when you don't have enemy infantry to deal with the siege breaker cannons. So overall, I love both versions, to be honest. Like, at some point I will just tell you at the end how to expand to buy another box that contains the landships, because I think both of them have very good role. If I had to choose only one, probably it would be the Monarch, because it's your main way to deal with entrenched infantry, but the Sovereign is so good as well with being transport and being just the linchpin of your offensive efforts. Both are really good, both are great landships. And again, you just need to change the main turret / command center. So just magnetize, or even don't magnetize, just put it down, up and down. With gravity, it's going to fit well. So don't glue, please. It would be bad. And just enjoy both versions of your landships, depending on your list. Okay, we're going to go quite fast now, because the landships were the big piece, as always, of the discussion. Now, about the rifle platoons, what do you get? You get 12 of them, and they go 6x6, those rifle platoons. What is the Crown Infantry all about? They have defense 2, damage limit 1, so that is usual. They don't have the Empire's better defense from the front, so they can die fast if they get shot at. They do have higher range, quite higher range than the Empire, actually, like really a lot. They can shoot from 7 to close range and up to 14, so that is good. Anti-light firepower is 5, 12, 18, also good, actually, also very good. And they even have anti-aerial firepower, which is not very useful now, but it's there. If you really need an emergency, it's possible. And they have average melee. Their special thing, beyond having actually good firepower at longer range than the Empire, is stoic defense. When the enemy charges your rifle platoons, you always have the defensive advantage. Even, like, this is something you have if the enemy charges you through a forest, for example, and it's like, here you always have defensive advantage on the melee fight. This gives you more resilience, this gives you more capacity to fight efficiently against the enemy, and this is just a great rule. So when we compare the Empire Infantry, which had more wounds, more stance for the points, and better resistance to firepower from the front, the Rifle Platoons of the Crown are a bit different. They have more firepower, they have less defense, but they are very good to receive the enemy's charges when they have enemy melee infantry. And since most of your units, your tanks, your artillery, even your landships, don't like to be in melee, those guys are here to hold the line, dropping out of transports, and probably just holding in the plains and always having a defensive advantage. Of course, you will have it if you're in a garrison, but even in plain, when you get charged, you will have a bonus. So never charge with your rifle platoons. That's not what you want anyway, because you don't have a great melee. You want to be within 14 inches, which is still very long range for infantry, and shoot all your dices. And they really have this feeling of rifle lines upon rifle lines, because actually the more stands you have, the more each stand gives you in terms of firepower, because you go from 5 to 12, so it's already +2, to 18, so it's already +3 compared to what you should receive if you just had multiplications. Overall, they are cheap, they are very good, they probably would like to be transported, and good, the Crown has options to move those guys around because they only move 4, it's not huge at all, and I absolutely love them. They are very good core for the Crown. Then you have the command platoon of the infantry, much more expensive, much more expensive, but you will need some of them to unlock some battle groups, and they have this specific rule. They're basically exactly the same. They have a little bit better discipline, 1 point better discipline than the rifle platoons, but the main thing is that they have chain of command 6. So within 6 inches of the unit, the entire unit, so any stand of the unit, within 6 inches you're going to have +1 to your discipline. That is quite good. It's really that can make the difference between breaking and or not. And having one rifle command platoon in the middle of your lines is always going to be a good choice. They are expensive, like I'm not joking about this. But when you compare some other options you have, for example, the artifact, the Standard of Albion, which is 40 points, and it's a special command that allows you to automatically pass any discipline test for your unit, which is great, but it's like 1 unit, etc. Wouldn't you want to have just a little bit more expensive rifle command platoon and unlock new battle groups, and then just spread this aura around, and then everybody around this rifle command gets a bonus? It's a choice, like Standard of Albion is okay, rifle command platoons are also great. It depends on your choice and what you want to do. Why not both as well? Do note that the resin model in this are not available in the huge faction starter. It's only in the 2-player starter set or the introductory starter set. This little commander there, so be worried, but don't worry about making your command platoon, because those are just little funky resin miniatures. You can absolutely have enough flags and everything that you have in the unboxing part to make your command platoons however many you want. Do note as well that the command platoons give more victory points to your opponent when they are destroyed, so something to take into consideration. Okay, we now switch to the Drake field guns, and I really like this unit. We've talked about it already during the presentation of the faction battle groups. It does have the rule cumbersome and static. Static means that you cannot charge, and if you lose in melee, you don't fall back, like you're gone straight away. So be careful, they're quite fragile in this sense. And cumbersome means if you make a double time, you gain reloading. So being able to remove cumbersome means you can just indeed do a double time, just charge forward, going very fast, not that fast, but still getting to good position, because you want with the Drake field gun to get into the best position possible, and then you will not have reloading, which means that the next turn you can aim and then shoot and be quite efficient. So that might be what you want to do with those little guys. For 70 points, you gain 4 models, so okay, and then you have a little discount after, like each 4 models after this, it's only either 50 points, either 60 for the different skills, so alright. They have interesting weapons. They can shoot at heavy units, even at longer range actually, but it's not their main purpose. If you only have this target, or you really have a priority heavy target, they can be anti-tank guns in emergency, let's say. But their main point is that they are made to shoot at light units. They have a firepower of 369 against heavy, 4, 8, 12 against infantry, and the big thing is that if you shoot within 10 inches, and remember double time, cumbersome that you can remove, if you shoot at point blank within 10 inches, which is usually more range than some of the other enemies' infantry, then you gain huge bonus. And when I say huge, I mean against light units, you go from 4 dices at the minimum size to 8 dices. So you double your firepower at point blank. Apparently in the fluff, it's because they changed the munition type. It's more like shrapnel things they're shooting. All right. And the other, it scales a bit less good at higher scale for the Drake field guns, because you still only get ever +4 for changing the munition type. So relatively, in terms of percentage, you gain a little bit less. You don't double at all. You gain, I guess, +50 and then +25%, something like this, and or +33 actually. And this is why the unit is cheaper the larger unit you make, because you're going to be vulnerable. You just lose 1 melee CQC combat and you're going to be wiped out, and you don't get then much more firepower, which explains. So minimal size of 4 is great. Actually, I would go for the sweet spot at 120 points for 8 models, and then you have this great unit that is still reasonably priced, shoots quite far, absolutely brutalizes enemy light units at point blank, and can still do some work against heavy units. They have, though, defense 2, damage limit 1, so they are as fragile as rifle platoons, so be very careful about that. They are DPS units for sure, and they are one of the few crown units that you really need to be careful with the positioning, because if they get caught out either in melee, either by anti-light weaponries, they can be wiped out very fast. But if you manage to give them the good angle, they can wipe out an enemy unit in one activation. We then go to the Stirling troop carriers. You're going to have 4 of those, and those are very important part of the crown list. They are heavy units, transports, and they basically carry your units. Each of them has a capacity of 3, so they can carry 3 units, which means that a pack of 2 Stirlings can either carry an entire rifle platoons, because you're going to have 6 stands, 3 between each of the Stirlings, or it also means that if you go to the size of 4, which you can, even with the starter box, you can carry 2 rifle platoons or 3 of the elite infantry, snipers, engineers, etc., because you're going to have 12 slots. You can, of course, carry 4 snipers, for example, in 2 Stirlings, but then you lose some space, like you have 2 slots that are not being used. Depends on you, guys. Those guys, though, are great transport. The Empire has no transport at all, and that's the only other faction we can compare them to. The Crown has great transport options. They're very tough. Each Stirling is going to have defense 2, but resilient front. I'm going to talk about it. It's a heavy unit, so immune to light firepower, and you really need to shoot at those with anti-tank guns. And they still have damage limit of 3. From the base, they're going to have kind of like 6 wounds in this sense, because of their defense and damage limits, so they need 6 hits to destroy 1. And they have resilient front, so if you shoot at them from the front, and most of the time, because you're going to charge them down first turn, you're going to see the enemy right in front of you, they're going to have +1 to their defense. So it's going to be defense 3, damage limit 3. So the enemy needs 9 hits on anti-tank guns, good luck getting this, like it's quite a lot actually, to destroy 1 Stirling. That is great. This is a very, very reliable transport, but you pay the price. You pay 40 points for 2 of those. So it costs more, the transport, than the infantry is carrying, in case you're carrying 6 stands of rifle platoons. But not only it's going to make sure they go fast in the center of the board to take objectives, not only they're going to be very resilient to the enemy's firepower, but also they're going to have their own firepower, which is not negligible. They can shoot against light units at range 12 for point blank and 20 at long range, 357. So it is going to shoot quite a few guys as well, and it has negligible impact attacks. Overall, I quite like the Stirling, and I expect to see at least 4 of those in every crown list, especially to carry some of the elite-ish melee infantry that we're going to see quite soon. We have to talk, though, about the alternative version that you can build from the Stirling, which is the Glamis Mobile Gun. They have the same defensive and mobility profile, so they're still very fast, speed 7, great. Still defense 2, damage limit 3 with resilient front, so exactly the same defensive profile. They are way more expensive at 75 for the base unit of 2, okay? They have the same anti-infantry weapon and impact, but they gain a gun. Like, they trade their transport capacity and big surplus in terms of points for and actually not negligible semi-artillery anti-tank firepower. They shoot maximum at 30 inches, so quite good. Point blank is 16 inches, so also quite long range, and their firepower is 357. So good to charge alongside your other tanks, and let's remember that they are mainstay, for example, in the artillery or in the line breaker tank battle groups, so not negligible here. And if you want some support mid-range artillery, they are great. They can clean also some infantry still, and they can really put the pain on the enemy's tanks, or even they can start to hunt some artillery. And yeah, I like the Glamis. They are quite cheap, quite resilient. They're not gonna be a game changer, game breaker activation, but they are good for their point cost. 75 for something that is heavy, defense 3 from the front, damage limit 3, with fine, quite good anti-light and fine anti-heavy firepower. I mean, what is not to like there? It's a great unit, and I'm afraid it's going to be a bit underestimated compared to other shinier units. But having cheap, very versatile, fast, resilient unit is great. It's not brilliant. It's not gonna be like, oh wow, the unit that you only see those guys, and oh my god, they eclipse everything else. But I think having 2 or 4 of those is always gonna be great. The only question is, do you want more Stirlings or more Glamis in your collection? Probably try to see if you can magnetize, because only the top here changes, and if you can magnetize it, that, or at least just don't glue it so you can swap it, that would be the best solution. Okay, you remember when we were talking about melee infantry? Well, now we're starting to see them. Those are the Royal Engineer Sappers. They are Scottish elite infantry, as you can see. Quite expensive, more expensive than rifle platoons, and you get less of them. There are 45 points for 4 models, and then you can increase at 75, 115. Wow, expensive. But what do you get? Same defensive profile as the normal infantry, defense 2, damage limit 1, and they don't have any defensive bonus if they get shot or anything. So they can die very fast, which means you don't want them in the open field and getting shot at or charged or whatever. They're a little bit faster at speed 5. They have fine anti-light firepower. They're actually like 3, 7, 13. Not insane. But why you want them? They do one thing, and one thing great, which is to absolutely demolish enemy heavy units. That's why they are sappers. They are, I don't know, explosives or whatever weapon they use. Their melee is 369, which is already not terrible, and they are wreckers, which means that if they attack units that have the heavy trait, tanks, artillery, landships, they basically more than double their firepower. They can go, when they're a small unit, they go from 3 to 8, huge difference. 6 to 12 at middle, and full strength they go from 9 to 16, still a huge bonus. And 16 dices of anti-heavy firepower. I mean, you go to hunt landships with this type of statistics. They also have some very cool rules, which is storming party and occupy. Storming party means they can garrison it as if it were a maneuver in the movement step, convenient. And when they storm a building, when they attack infantry in a building, the enemy does not get defensive advantage. That's huge. It's kind of like if they had flamethrowers or something, if we compare to the Empire. And yeah, it's really huge, because those guys can just kick the infantry out of a building efficiently, then stay inside, shoot around, and if enemy comes with tanks or anything, with a quite large speed of 5 for infantry, they can just charge around on enemy tanks. Those guys really, really enjoy being in transports. Probably Stirlings, or we'll see there are even better transport later on. But those guys, if you leave them in the open field, they're gonna get wiped out by artillery, by enemy snipers. They are a high priority target for your opponent. So do have a plan to deliver them into the middle of the table, where they can kick the enemy out of buildings or just charge enemy landships and stuff. Do notice that if you want to have a good artifact, you can have the Mad Minute artifact, which allows you to give +2 dices when you shoot at an infantry unit. And the Royal Engineer Sappers, if you have them in the building, you might have only light targets in range, because the enemy keeps your enemy heavy far, and you don't want them to get out of the building or the cover or whatever. And it's always good for 20 points to have a little trick to actually make them efficient and threatening against enemy light units. Finally, the last rule they have, and I'll be honest, which is the rule that makes me want to play them, is occupy. This means that when the enemy has a landship, a behemoth, that has been destroyed, they can get inside the wreckage, which, as you remember, when your landship is destroyed, it stays on the table. It's just destroyed, it's like terrain, like blocking terrain. These guys can get inside and garrison it as if it were a building. That is simply brilliant. I absolutely love this. And the enemy cannot kick you out. They can try to get you out as if they were assaulting a building, but they will not be able to occupy at their turn, except if they also have occupy. But it means those guys, the best trick you could have is to put them in Stirlings, put them in Tristan, that we'll see later, going down the center, absolutely wreck the enemy landship with up to 16 dices. The enemy landship is destroyed, it's a wreck, and then in the middle of the table, you have this garrison that only you can occupy. Then you shoot around, maybe with minute to give you a little boost to firepower. And if the enemy gets close, you have all the defensive advantages, but the enemy can do nothing about it. That's a great combo, very cinematic, very, very thematic as well. And probably one of the coolest units of the crown, just because of this combo of being a melee wrecker with occupy just before and storming party. It's such a thematic unit. Another unit that is nice, but I am less fan of, and I will explain to you why, is the sharp rifles. So basically like scouts, like snipers, let's say like this, like skirmishers units. They're even more expensive than the engineers at 50 for the base 4 stands. Wow. Steel defense 2, damage limit 1. Okay, they die very fast. They do have irregular, so they always have loose formation, so they're easier to move around. They have good rules, but they pay a lot for things that might not use that much. Let's talk first about the things that they will use beyond the irregular. They have Vanguard, so they have a free double march move at the before the beginning of the first turn. So that's great, they can be your scout. Okay, very good rule, we love it. They have Pioneers, so they consider the difficult terrain like the forest or the mud, the trenches, as an open terrain. So they are not slowed down, they like it very much, great. It's good, but they are not gonna be moving a lot, I think, because usually they have great range and they won't want to be in cover. So I don't see them benefiting for Pioneers as much as melee unit that want to charge through forest, for example. And finally, they have Shrouded, which I feel like they pay in their price, and it means they are always considered as being concealed, even when they are on the open fields. It's okay, it's good. It doesn't combo so good with Pioneers because Pioneers you are gonna be in forest, and Shrouded means even when you're not in forest you have cover. So where do you want to be, forest or not? That's a good question. And it's so easy to have concealed with this type of infantry that has Pioneers in forest and everything, that Shrouded you will not pay it a lot. Plus there are quite a few ways. Concealed is not as good as it sounds. There are many ways for the enemy to cancel the concealed bonus, and I'm afraid those guys for 50 points are just gonna get obliterated, whether they're in the open field with Shrouded or in the forest, by the first anti-light artillery unit that looks at them a bit angrily, and then they're gonna die right away. They're way less efficient than the Jezzail. Jezzail of the Empire was basically sniper, but also great anti-tank, killing basically one tank per activation, which is great. They are a little bit more expensive. But those guys have less range. Yes, they are more shrouded, more mobile, great, but 32 inches, it's nothing to sniff at. Firepower, anti-light, 5, 8, 11, okay. And they can, again, have precision, so they can shoot at officers. But they can only shoot at light units. They should kill one infantry unit, so thus the officer, whenever they shoot, even at this minimum size. Okay, if you want to make sure double their size, and then you're gonna have 8 dice, is even safer, but still not great. And that's about it. That's all they do. They have good anti-light precision weapon, up to 32 inches. They have some funky rules to show they are pioneers, and they have Shroud and Vanguard. Vanguard is good, but all the rest, I'm like, don't you pay a bit too much for that? And if you like the theme and stuff, they are good. They are irregular. Vanguard, it really means they can be your scout, like going around, spreading out, blocking your enemy, preventing him from charging, starting to occupy buildings and stuff. Like, they're good. in this sense. I do feel that their defensive profile is very bad for their point cost, even if they look like they have good rules like Shrouded and Pioneers, and their offensive firepower is okay. You're gonna kill the officer you're aiming at, but that's about it. And having one unit maybe reinforced to 8 stands in your list is okay. Maybe. Beyond that, I don't see myself putting a lot of sharp rifles on the table. Spitfire Rocketeers are your aerial infantry, a little bit less expensive, 45 points for 4 stands, okay, same defensive profile as ever. They are interesting, like I like them better than the sharp rifles, for example. They are harder to put in transport because they are bulky, so they count as 2 units, so very difficult to put them in transports, indeed. You can, if you want, but just be careful that it's going to take a lot of space and you don't have that many transports because literally in your collection. So do take this into consideration, but they have good rules. They have good anti-light firepower, 4, 8, 10, and when they shoot at point blank, which is within 3, they go at 6, 12, 15. So those guys really want, with their little double pistols, to go right in front of the enemy with their good movement as well and just shoot them down. They also have good, actually great melee against light units especially, because you see they go 4, 6, 8, which is already quite fine as melee infantry score. And if they go in melee against infantry, let's imagine some sort of firefight, I don't know how they do, but they go to 8, 12, 16. So great anti-infantry melee and great anti-light shooting as well. Like, those guys just eat enemy infantry for breakfast. They are irregular as well, so lots of movement trees that you can get. They can soar, so this is insane. Instead of moving, and they have speed 4, they can decide to soar, then they become visible for everyone. So be careful for like a reaction fire and everything, but they're quite cheap, so if the enemy uses their big gun against them, you're fine. But they do become aerial as well. So if the enemy has anti-air guns, in like watching out in Overwatch, ready to fire, don't use soar because you're gonna be the only aerial unit in your list. Because right now we don't have planes, helicopters and stuff. Only flying infantry can become aerial, so be careful. Those guys are the #1 targets for your enemy anti-air guns. But if you do, if the enemy doesn't have anti-air and you don't care about Overwatch and stuff, they can move 10 inches and then shoot or charge or whatever, but mostly shoot, I think is what you're gonna want. They can soar, get in the building because you can jump over enemy units and stuff, get in the building and just be annoying. Just be annoying from there, because then you are still cheap-ish and you will absolutely annihilate the enemy infantry, and then maybe you're gonna be, I don't know, in a forest or in the terrain that you can defend, and everything is gonna be great. Do note that this unit also has a versatile, which means that you can kind of like break the activation sequence. Instead of doing, you know, like your movement and then the enemy makes a reaction and then you can shoot and they react, you can start with attacking. That's the first thing you do, and then you can make your movement step. And I'm even wondering, so this is probably going to be in the FAQ that we are waiting in the coming days or weeks for more Cradle, but I do understand that this would allow to make an attack step, so shooting with your guns. Then you can make a move, and in the movement step you can charge the, for example, infantry unit, so they don't shoot at you just after, and then you're engaged in melee with them. And maybe it does allow it, maybe there is a rule I didn't find that allows you to still punch at this step, at the charge step. Anyway, being versatile gives you a lot of versatility in how you want to activate, and especially it allows you to shoot before you move, which can be great, especially if the enemy has short-range infantry just in front of you and you don't want to trigger the Overwatch by moving. Overall, really big fan of the Spitfire Rocketeers. Okay, we finished with all the infantry. Now we're gonna have a look at the vehicles. We already saw quite a few of them. The main tanks of the Crown is the Galahad medium battle tanks, and they call it medium, but look at the size of it. Like, for me it's a heavy tank. Okay, you do you, Crown. They are one of the main factors of why the Crown is so powerful. Those guys are 155 for 2 tanks, but damn, they are beasts. They have defense 3, flat, okay, so you need to make 3 hits every time you want to make a single point of damage, and they have resilient front. So when you shoot at them from the front, they have this little armor there. You need to make 4 hits every time to want to make a single point of damage. So if you want to kill one tank from the front, you need to make 16 hits. That is quite insane. The only weapons that go through it are the penetrating weapons, and then you need just 1 hit to kill one guy. And this is what the Giselle of the Empire have. It sounds a little broken when you consider it like this. Maybe there's going to be a little correction, especially against heavy units. But except these very edge cases that might be gone, those guys are here to be in the center, be extremely tough, and being basically unmovable. They are the most resilient unit beyond landships currently in the game. Like those guys, like 16 hits of heavy to kill one guy, you can understand that there are not many units in the game, if not, like I don't think there is any unit in the game that can kill more than 1 Galahad per activation. I don't see it. And even killing 1 Galahad per activation, it's already huge, except if you have penetrating. And again, temporary rule, maybe. They're expensive though, 155, like, I mean, it's not nothing. But if you make a pack of 6 of those at 405, that's absolutely insane level of resilience straight away. They have their main gun, which is anti-heavy, 10-20 inches, 6-10-14, so good progression there. Even 2 is already quite good anti-tank firepower, and you can go all the way up. They're more there for their resilience than for their firepower. They also have, and this is a big one, anti-light units, and you're like, but why? I will never use my anti-light units. I want their big guns. Well, wait a second. They are Sponson's weapon, which means that after an enemy unit has made a charge maneuver with your tanks, you can make opportunity fire with this Sponson weapon, even if you were not on the lookout. You cannot do it more once per activation, okay. But it means you have 6 tanks of Galahads, okay. You're going around with your so many wounds in the center of the table, facing the enemy, shooting your very heavy anti-tank guns at the enemy tanks, and then let's say the enemy has a cavalry charging you, okay, or in anti-tank infantry, for example. Well, then you can for free make a point-blank attack, so you will have the bonus, of 9 dices sponsons. 9 dices against infantry that might kill 3 or even 4 if you're lucky stands. So that might first of all wipe out the enemy outright. That might as well trigger a suppression test against them that breaks them, like make them suppressed, and then you're gonna be more resilient against their attack. They can really be a huge difference. And plus you're quite tough, so even if there is enemy anti-tank infantry, I mean, look at you, like okay, you pay 405 points for 6 tanks, but let me tell you, the enemy is not getting rid of you anytime soon. There is another variant of the Galahad, which is called the Galahad Breachers, and if I'm being absolutely honest, this looks like a way for War Cradle to tell you, spam those guys because you want to, because it's almost the same tank, almost the same point cost. It's like +5 here, +5 there, and +10 here, almost the same point cost, same everything except the light weapons are a little bit better. So probably if you had to choose just one, you would probably want this Galahad Breacher, and it means that if there is enemy infantry garrison in building just in front of your tanks and you don't know how to deal with them, well, those sponsoring weapons are siege breaker. I don't know what they are, they're probably melta guns or something, and it means that you shoot at the enemy infantry, and then, as we've seen with the big artillery gun, on a 5+, you can just outright demolish the building that will collapse. So quite good. But remember also what we said about mainstay and everything about the unit. It means that because the breachers are technically a different unit, you can, in a single battalion, single battle group, have 2 units of Galahad medium tanks, because they are mainstay, and 1 unit of Galahad breachers, all of this in a single battle group. So if you make tournaments and they say like, yeah, maximum 1 battle group, guys, well, you don't care, you can bring 18 tanks to the battle with 1 battle group, easily. So yeah, that is quite impressive. Don't do this in a friendly environment. Yeah. Overall, the Galahad tanks, whether they are medium tanks or breachers, are absolutely tanks. They will hold the line, they are very efficient, and they are core part of how the crown holds the center of the table. If for some reason you don't want to build your Galahads as Galahads, there is another quite good version that you could build, which is the Tristan Assault Transports. Yes, they are land raiders. Well, let's not go around, like they are absolutely land raiders. Like I will move them a little bit so you can see. But if we're being fair, it's the land raiders that copied the World War I British tanks that are exactly this little guy. It's a transport, first of all. It has assault ramp. This is the first thing we need to say. When you make an assault step, like during the assault step of this guy, it can make a special action, which from what my understanding is on top of shooting, and it means you can make a free disembark maneuver, so the infantry can just go out and then kind of like the raiders move, charge, do its business without having to disembark. That is great. This very, very heavy transport unit has a transport capacity of 4, so it means 2 of those guys can transport 4 of our favorite Spitfire Rocketeers. You can see the combo starting to appear there. Or of course it means that 2 of those guys can transport 8 of the engineers to go hunting enemy landships. So you can see where I'm going with this. It has the same defensive stat line as the Galahad, except it doesn't have the heavy protection in the front. So it's not defense 4 from the front, it's defense 3 all the time, but still damage limit of 4. Great. 65 points for 2 of those guys. Actually not insane. Like it's not that much more than the Stirlings, which were like I think 40 points for 2 of those. So you don't pay that much extra. It is a little bit slower, yes, but you get better weapons, which are sponsored weapons. Again, if you get charged, you can make a reaction fire. Great. It also have okay anti-heavy firepower, 357. So after you disembark your infantry, you can still support them quite well. That is great. And yeah, transport capacity of 4 with this defense. This is your premium way to transport your infantry, either your Spitfire Rocketeers, if you want, or your engineers if you want to go landship hunting. Either way, some Tristan is great, and I just think you want more, like you want so many armored sprues for the crown that your main decision is going to be how many boxes you buy because of how many tanks and Tristan assault transports you want. The Dragoons are Scottish units, and they're first of all quite stylish. They look, well, I will not compare to 40k, but you know what they look like. They look like Ballistaris, and I quite like this design. The Blackwatch Heavy Dragoons are the shooty one, let's say, if I had to sum it up. They are shrouded, so you can put them out in the open. They will be concealed, and since they don't have pioneers, I can see a bit more. They're considered as cavalry. 80 points give you 4 models, okay. Defense 2, but damage limit 2, so a little bit tougher, but don't consider them as super tanky. They are fine being kind of like artillery units, let's say, like short-range artillery out in the open, but being concealed. Keep those guys like away from forest and stuff. They don't have great melee at all for the point cost, so forget about it. But they have good anti-everything firepower. Against light, they start quite, like they're not great, 3, 7, 11, like not great at all, but have good anti-tank firepower, 14, 22 inches, and 4, 6, 9, so quite okay actually, quite okay. But their main firepower is against aerial units, 5, 9, 13. Again, we've said, there are almost no air units right now in the game, but when we're gonna start to see some aircraft, some flying behemoth, and of course helicopters and planes making strafing ranks, etc., those guys are gonna be one of your main anti-air weapons, because you're gonna put them somewhere. They're gonna be shrouded anyway. They're gonna be on Overwatch, quite annoying to deal with, and they're just gonna shoot at everything around with their firepower. Right now they can hunt enemy flying infantry. Absolutely, they can if you put them on Overwatch, for sure. They will be great at this. They are okay against tanks and not great against infantry. So a little bit underwhelming unit right now because they don't have their favorite target spamming the tables yet. We'll talk about it again in 6 or 10 months when you're going to have more air units, and then probably they're going to take some more value. But right now they are a good support unit, especially against tanks. Relatively resilient. They're not insane, but if you like the design of the model, and I mean, I know I do, don't feel bad putting them on the table at all. And the other light infantry model that you can have with the Dragoons are the Assault Dragoons, so also cavalry, and those are pioneers, so they're not shrouded, so don't put them in the open, but they are pioneers, so they don't care about difficult or dense terrain. So put them in forests where they can be in cover. That's where they want to be, and they want to charge from the protection of forest or whatever terrain that you can hide into. So they have meh anti-tank firepower, 3, 7, 11, it's not great. They have actually okay firepower against light units, 4, 8, 12, from 7 to 18 inches. And if you shoot within 7 inches, you go to 6, 10, 14. So actually quite okay anti-infantry firepower. But the main thing is they are melee charging cavalry, and they have firepower, like melee power of 6, 8, 14. So a big pack punches really, really hard. And you might really want to have this huge pack of assault dragoons to charge down the enemy. I feel like the assault dragoons really would benefit from the artifact, like the upgrade called countercharge, which means that during the reaction step you can make a special command to your dragoons that would be on the lookout, and then instead of just shooting, they can make a charge maneuver and then a close quarter attack right away. And this means that having this big pack in the forest on the lookout is great, because you say to the enemy, if you get close, either I shoot at you with my anti-light or maybe anti-heavy unit, but especially if you get close enough that I can charge you, and they have speed 6 so they can, they're gonna charge through the forest and just obliterate you with this counter charge. So good little combo that I think could be there. Last type of cavalry, and the most normal cavalry, is going to be the horse guard, and those guys are 5 stands per unit, so okay, 75 points, defense 2, damage limit 1, so as fragile as any infantry, be careful with that. They have though speed of 8, so fastest units you have right now, light units, okay, and they only have melee, so you really need to have a plan on how to move with them, because yes, you have quite a few stands, but they can die very fast, and they cannot shoot. So again, they can have this counter charge order, okay. They're very fast, sure. If you do manage to go in melee against any unit except light, it's going to be 6, 8, 14 dices, okay. If you do target light unit, which is their favorite targets, it's going to be 9, 12, 21. Yeah, you heard that right, 21 anti-light infantry dices. It's absolutely crazy. And there is no infantry regiment, even at full strength, that would be able to handle this type of charge. So very high floor, high ceiling unit, because if you use them right, they will clear the path for you. Like, they will obliterate all the enemy infantry on their way. But if they get caught out of cover, they will die very, very fast for their point cost. So something to be careful with. If you buy them, I would 100% every time buy the Forlorn Hope upgrade, which means that at the beginning of the clash, one unit can make a free double time maneuver, and those guys really want to move 16 inches at the beginning of the turn, because that's all they want to do. They want to charge forward. So buying this 15 points upgrade on your 195 big pack would make it go to 210 points and give you so much more value, because you're just gonna go on a flank and just push them forward, and it's gonna give a big headache for your opponent for 200 points. Like, how do I deal those 15 stands of light units? I need to deal with them. They're not invincible, but all my priorities will be on it, and while the enemy has to deal with your cavalry, all your other units can get into position, and if the enemy doesn't deal with your cavalry, well, damn, he's in for a bad time. Last two type of units that we need to see are the artillery of the crown. We have seen that they have a specific battle group for artillery, and they do have good artillery. We'll start with the Mordred heavy artillery, defense 2, damage limit 2, so as tough technically as Dragoons, but they have resilient front. So from the front they are defense 3, and since they shoot so far, up to 45 inches, most of the time you're gonna be shot at from the front. So quite good. They're also, as we've seen for the Dragon, they're cumbersome and static. If they lose a melee combat, they die, and cumbersome, they cannot make double time, and if they make a double time, they get a reloading status, which is a bit sad, but happens. You do have ways, remember, to remove the cumbersome rule. Okay, we've seen their defensive profile. For 110 points, you have 2 of those guys, and then you have some discount, because of course, a single lost melee combat and everybody dies. So of course, you need to be careful about it. What do these guys have? They have okay, actually underwhelming anti-infantry firepower, 4, 6, 8, and you need to reload, of course, each time you shoot. So not great, but against tanks, they have 7, 12, 17, up to 45 inches, and if you shoot at enemy tanks, you have devastating. So if you have any exceeding hits, it's another point of damage. this makes those guys one of your main units to hunt enemy tanks, or even better, to hunt enemy landships. Because if your enemy has landships, you put 6 of those Mordred heavy artillery all the way to the back of your lines, straight in front of the enemy landships at 45 inches. You can deploy them if you know where they are. And they're gonna just shoot turn after turn after turn. 17 dice is devastating. Those guys are great long-range landship hunters or tank hunters. Or they can fight the enemy artillery if they can see it. Because be careful, those guys are basically giant anti-tank guns. They are not really artillery. Really see them as glorified, huge anti-tank, direct line of sight cannons, which is something they do really well. If you do want real artillery, you have the Boers heavy bombards, a bit cheaper, 100 points, 170, 260, okay. They barely move, you can remove cumbersome if you want to get them into good position, but they are indirect anyway, so you can really complement that. Same defensive profile, but they can be hidden, which is a big boost for their defensive prowess. They shoot even a little bit further, up to 48 inches. You're in close range within 24, but be careful, higher minimum range of 8. And those guys are vice versa. They are anti-infantry units. If you shoot at enemy tanks, it's not great, 357. Indirect, okay, but reload, minimum range, If you shoot at an infantry, much better. You are devastating against infantry, so reverse, and it's 5, 11, 17. So great anti-infantry firepower. You can make huge barrage with those guys. First turn you can aim and then shoot. And then you're going to have to reload and shoot and make a cycling like this. So they are usually not going to have so many bonuses. But at some point you don't care. You throw 17 dices. Yes, you're going to have the indirect negative penalty. You're not going to aim. Maybe your enemy is going to be concealed. You're going to have a lot of negative, but you throw 17 dice. So even if you don't have a lot of rerolls, you don't care. And for 260 points, you are going to delete 1 infantry regiment per turn. More of a meta thing that I have to say right now about the Boers. I think you really want those guys, maybe even a huge pack of like 4 of those guys or 6 of those guys. Because until the problem of the Giselle has been fixed, it means that if your enemy plays Empire and he has some Giselle infantry, this infantry can stay from far away and they can kill 1 Galahad per activation of Giselle per turn, because 1 hit is a dead Galahad. If your enemy stays in the back with these giant anti-tank snipers, kind of like hidden, how do you deal with them? It's very hard to have extreme range anti-light weapon. Well, those guys, indirect, yes, 48 inches, devastating, up to 17 dices of infantry, you can obliterate the enemy Giselle. Like, you can delete them before they even have a chance to shoot at your tanks. So, in terms of a meta, at least 4 Boers, for me, is what I start my list with, almost, because it is your answer to the enemy Giselle. First activation of the turn for you, 48 inches, the Boers, a little bit aggressively placed, so you have a lot of range, but behind the building, so you're completely hidden. You use your indirect and you aim for the enemy Giselle if you play against Empire, because it's the only like broken unit of the Empire, and the Boers is a hard counter to this broken enemy unit, which means it's maybe not as broken as it could be. But yeah, you absolutely need those guys, I think, in the current meta. Okay, we've seen everything. The last thing is like, how do you actually expand beyond this box once you've bought it? Well, there are a few ways, and actually I didn't say this for the Empire, but I will say it. The best way, the best deal is to buy another faction starter, because it's such a great deal. Yes, you're going to have more rule books and cards and dice and everything. Maybe you don't need as many of this, but remember that many people have the introductory sets or the 2-player Battle for Singapore starter set, and they're looking for rule books and cards to buy. So you can absolutely resell it quite easily, I believe. You're going to have more terrain, but that's always good. And then you're going to have an absolute horde of things. Like everything I've just said, you double it. So you have no question whatsoever about how to build your list. You will have enough tanks, transport, artillery, everything to have a lot of choices. So it is going to be quite a price, like 2 stars. It's going to be 300 euros. Remember that you can have minus 10% on MyOB plays. And if you do in the basket, you can choose Love and Wargames, and we gain like 1 or 2% back, maybe 3, 2.5 I think it is. Thank you for if you do that, and then it means you're gonna save 30 euros on this. So that is quite a big saving, and when you start to have big packages like this, it is quite good to go through reseller. And if you're in Europe, MyOB Place is the best place to get some Dystopian Wars and Armoured Clash content. If you don't want to spend another 150, well, you can absolutely just get what you want the most, which is another Landship, we've seen how good they are, and more tanks and more heavy artillery and more Dragoons and everything. This is the Sovereign Battle Group, 62 euros. Again, you can get minus 10% on top of all of this, and this is a great complement if you don't want a second starter, because it's too much an investment, I understand. Be careful though, like do consider if you really don't want the other starter, because you don't want 3 Landships. You want 2 of them so you can have 1 of each at larger point scale games. You don't want to buy the starter and the Sovereign and later on, okay, maybe I will buy a starter, because then you have 3 Landships. Yes, you can sell it to people that only have Battle for Singapore, for example, or only the Crown introductory starter set. That's an option. But it is a little bit harder for you to go for the second starter set after you have the Sovereign. You feel a bit worser. So do consider, if you're really sure that you don't want another starter, the Sovereign Battle Group is a great way to have more of the tanks, which is exactly what you want. More artillery, also what you love, and another Landship. Plus more cavalry to make this big 15 stands pack of cavalry that has Vanguard for double move. This is what you need as well. And some more Dragoons, which are not super useful right now, except if you want to make this huge counter-charge pack. But later on, you can also use them as anti-air units, and they are your only current efficient anti-air unit. Finally, 35 euros only, you have the Crown Infantry Regiment, and that's always good, a lot of good things. The Crown Line Infantry, the Rifle Platoons are great, we've seen that. The Royal Engineer Sappers, amazing as well, same as the Spitfires. Sharp Rifles, I'm not such a big fan, but you can use them. Like, I mean, they are usable, they are great scouts as well. Just don't use them for their firepower and don't think they are unkillable, they are far from this. More Drake field guns, always good, and the Stirlings that can become the Glamis light gun, also great units that you want a lot of, and don't underestimate the Glamis, it's a great unit. Okay, we are reaching the end of the video. I hope that you enjoyed, I hope it was useful for you, the unboxing part, the Tactica, how to build your list, how to expand everything. Thank you very much for having stayed until the end. These videos take a lot of time to prepare, so if you enjoyed all of this, please give us a thumbs up, it really helps, and especially give us a comment to tell you that it was helpful for you. First of all, you gain a chance to win an entire battle fleet and an entire, like basically armada, either for the Union, either for the Covenant, for Dystopian Wars. And at the time I record this video, there is like 10 or 15 people left until we make our big contest to see who wins this. So depending on when you see this video, it can be this that you can win, or it can be our next game, and you will see very soon what it is. We're gonna choose together in live what you might win. But for sure you will win something if you put a little comment, like you will gain a chance to win something. Also subscribe so we reach the 1500 subscribers very fast. It's a great milestone. Thank you guys for making it a reality, and share with your friends and everything. Of course, if you have questions, also in the comments, I will make sure to answer your tactical questions. If I made a mistake, do point out, like it's a new game, we can make mistakes. Thank you again to the person that pointed out how the all-out attack is working. It's good to know, like I will not make the mistake again. If you saw any other type of mistake, however, do let us know and I will try to pin your comment later. Thank you very much guys, until the next video, take care of yourself and remember to keep all things fair in love and war games. Bye!